Good evening to The Truth is Simple, Season 2, Episode 2. Today is January 2nd. No, it's not. It's January 16th, 2024. This is the second episode is what I meant. I'm Dave Corum, your host. Today, we're going to talk about January 6th. One side's Insurrection Day, and the other side's protest of an election. Whether you believe the election or not, we're going to save that for another day, I think. But there's a lot to say about that. I mean, there are a lot of facts out there, and I don't know if you've watched Donald Trump's speech from January 6th. I would highly recommend you go watch that. I didn't really watch the whole thing until today, because I knew I was going to be doing this. And I thought, hey, you know what? It's probably the guy's being charged, criminally charged and prosecuted for a lot of this. He's supposedly the insurrection king. So it might make sense to go to the root of what caused the insurrection, which to me it's not an insurrection. And I'll tell you why. If you go back to the Boston Tea Party, where the 13 colonies decided to break away from King George in England, there were actually people killed at that event. It kind of led up. There was actually some stuff that happened before that. Probably the Boston Tea Party was the biggest part of it. That had to do with taxes. That's why they were throwing the tea in the water, because of taxation. The colonists felt they were being taxed to death and didn't have any representation. Does that make you feel like something's going on today that happened back then? Maybe not. That's fine. So we'll compare a real insurrection to the Boston Tea Party to some aspect. The second insurrection I could only really think where the United States kind of like was falling apart was the Civil War. 650,000 Americans died in that war. Brother fighting brother, dad fighting son, grandpa fighting dad, I guess. So I can't really see how that in and of itself even comes close. I know. I don't think there's been an ongoing insurrection since January 6th. So I can't really compare the Civil War with this January 6th date. They just aren't apples to apples. It's been compared, I think, to Pearl Harbor. Again, that's a war with a Japanese empire. Has nothing to do with stuff within the United States. So I don't think that really fits. I think it might have even been compared to 9/11. Same thing there. I mean, that has nothing to do with insurrection and trying to overturn your government. So I can't really think of any date or any other event in American history, or maybe even world history that I'm aware of. Maybe I'm wrong. If you find something or know of something, please let me know. So I can't think of anything that would come in comparison to that. When I think of the incidents that have happened here through Obama's period and Trump's period, with all these Antifa and Black Lives Matter events, the police shootings, any white on black racial killings, murders, whatever it was. When I think of all that stuff and all the violence and everything that's gone on since then, the only organization that I can really think that wants to overturn the United States government, again, I might be wrong, you can let me know, is Antifa. I think Black Lives Matter is against a lot of the things of the government. I don't think they necessarily want to overthrow or overturn the government. I could be wrong, I guess. But Antifa is the only one that's really said, hey, I want to overthrow the U.S. government, get rid of it, start all over again, and set up something different. What are they going to set up? Not a lot of choices out there. But anyway, let's talk about January 6th. And to me, and hopefully after your reconsideration and your own investigation, it'll come to your mind that was really not an insurrection. It was the Americans' First Amendment right to protest, to go to their government, and to speak out. As far as going into the Capitol building itself, that was a bad decision by whoever went in. I don't think I would have done that. I think there's a chance I might have gone to Washington, D.C. and protested, but I I don't think I would have gone into the Capitol. That's just me. Not everybody is made up of me or like me. So, I would have probably stayed outside and held a flag or a sign and did my little protest. If somebody from the news wanted to come and talk to me about stuff, I probably would have gave them my point of view and why I'm here and why I'm protesting. But that's for another day too. So what I want to show you is, or give you here is TCN video link. That stands for Tucker Carlson Network. Why? Why are you using Tucker Carlson? That guy is totally wacko. Maybe you think that. I think he's a little off kilter at times, but I think he's got a lot of valuable information. I think his interviews, right, left, center, whatever you think they are, I think they're pretty good, well composed. I think the people that he puts on his shows or his, I don't know, what do you call it, Tucker Carlson Country or whatever it is, I think he does a decent job. I think he asks questions that are relevant. I think the people answer the questions logically. I don't see a lot of hype. I don't see a lot of blackness as far as, trying to hide stuff in a corner or smoke and mirrors, anything like that. Darkness, I don't see any of that. I just see kind of like, all right, let me listen to this guy, let me do my own investigation and see if he makes or she makes sense. And that's what I've done with this January 6th. So on this Tucker Carlson Network, I gave you kind of a link to a congressman named Clay Higgins from Louisiana. He was on their show. He is, let me see, I have it up here on my screen. Let me see if I can bring it up. All right, he is a congressman from, where is he from? He's from Louisiana. He's in the House of Representatives. I think he kind of reveals the facts as he knows them, whether you're going to believe him 100% or think there's kind of a mix in there. Okay. I tend to lean towards him a little bit. I didn't, from watching and observing his answers and so forth, I felt a truthfulness coming out of him from what he believes he's learned. I think there's some room to kind of look a little bit maybe on the other side too. So if I had something to contrast it against, I would definitely do that. But you usually only hear one side from all the news from one side, especially in what we call the media today, like CNN and MSNBC, ABC, CBS, New York Times, Washington Post, places like that, which I've already discussed in the past. Who owns those places? What is their agenda? And that's what you're seeing there. You're not really seeing news. It's all propaganda for the most part. But once in a while, they do actually provide a news story. So you'll hear all the one side. For example, the commission from January 6th that Congress set up, all Democrats except for two. And those two were really not red Democrats. They're actually blue Democrats. Or blue Republicans, I'm sorry. They're not red Republicans, they're blue Republicans. If that. The only reason they probably are a Republican is because in the communities they serve, maybe at least the one guy from Illinois, that's how he's going to get elected. He has to pretend he's won because the people in his area are that party, but he's actually the opposite party, not the real. Anyway, so that's where we go. So as we look here, we look at Higgins. I have the video up there. I'm going to go to the next page here, little information. So if you're looking at this video, I recommend you look at it. There's another one that came out a couple days ago. It's on Twitter, and I don't know who put that out. Oh, Blaze TV. Okay, Glenn Beck. So you got to take that too. But some of the video is not, some of that video is from Tucker Carlson. So I'll give you the long version here. The second version is just a condensed version of Higgins' story on Tucker Carlson. All right. So anyway, Higgins is part of the Homeland Security Committee and Oversight Reform Committee. So he's on that committee that was run by, I think it was Benny Thompson, a Democrat under Nancy Pelosi. So he's on that committee since the Republicans are now the majority in the House, they get to put in their own committee members, and usually the chairman becomes a Republican, so forth and so on. They usually stick 1 or 2, 3 other party members from the other party on that commission too, just to kind of balance it out and give it some equalness, I guess you could say. So anyway, go watch that video. At basically the 7:10 mark, Higgins kind of reveals that the FBI planted the seeds of January 6th. So, okay, maybe there's some truth to that. He's got some information, unlike Adam Schiff when they were going after President Trump with the Russian collusion thing, which if you paid attention, you would have found out 4 or 5 years ago was all bunk. It was not real. There was no collusion. They had a special prosecutor who found nothing after spending, I don't remember what it was, 20, 30, 40 million dollars. Found zero, nothing, zilch. And so anyway, Trump was exonerated. That was a lie. It was all set up by the political Democrats. Hillary Clinton is where that came from. All right, so do your homework and find the truth in that. We're not talking about that right now. We're talking about the 6th. So if you go there and see, there were FBI agents infiltrating these MAGA groups or conservative groups that Higgins kind of says they planted the seeds or the seed for the supposed January 6th event. As a retired police officer, as a commissioner, public traffic safety commissioner, I can see, and to be honest with you, I'm not a conspiracy person, but I felt some of these transitions, some of these things, the way they've happened, I could actually see how that works. And yes, that is a very big possibility. And I hope the truth actually gets revealed one way or the other. I am leaning more towards, yes, these people were set up. That's just me, and from what I've seen, heard, and so forth, investigated, to me, they were completely set up. So let's look at the second point in here. At, where is it, 11:50 on the clock during the video, Higgins kind of describes the labyrinth that is the Capitol building. That building's got so many doors, hallways, floors, basements, different basements, levels, and so forth, all over the place, that anybody who walked in there wouldn't know where to go to find anything. Maybe the bathroom, because there's signs up somewhere, or the Senate side, the House side, the rotunda rooms where they all meet. Okay, those are probably pretty easy to find, but everything else, it's everywhere. If you remember if you remember and watched any of the information, somebody found their way into Nancy Pelosi's office. From what I understand and what I have heard from other sources other than Higgins here, it would be almost impossible to find Nancy Pelosi's office because it was so obscure in a place or location that most people wouldn't even think about going to look at. So that being said, how did these people find their way around? Higgins makes comment, and if we are ever entitled to see all the videos, you'll probably find that it's true. There are people waiting inside to kind of guide and lead these people that are coming into the building. What? Guiding? Leading? Around the building? How does that work in an insurrection? We have insurrectionists already in the building before the insurrection's happening? How does that work? Unless it's kind of a setup. Somebody planted them and put them there. Higgins makes a comment that there, to his knowledge, there is probably at least 250 people, FBI agents or whatever you want to call them, affiliates, within these supposed anarchists that are going to come in and destroy the American government or whatever in our freedoms and so forth. 250 that were actually leading, cheering on through the process. Again, that's hard to believe. I would never want to think that anybody in law enforcement, especially the FBI, which to me at one time was the most integrable department law enforcement agency in the world. But as we have seen over the past year to 2 years, 3 years, that's not, they're probably, there are some that are still that way, but there are a lot in the upper echelon or other areas that are not so American, that believe in the rights of the people and the citizens. I find that hard for me as a retired law enforcement officer to how can anybody do that? You take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and yet you're violating it daily based upon what you're doing. I just don't get that. And then at 14:58, Higgins is asked by Tucker, who planned this? And you have got to watch that part. It is like, wow. He kind of just spits it out. Again, why would, a political party that's on the receiving side do it to itself? I can't really think of too many reasons why Republicans would go after Trump. I mean, there are those. We've talked about a few of them, like Liz Cheney, who was on the committee. She's been after him. We made Mitt Romney, of course. He hates Trump. I don't know why. He's just that. George Bush, the Bushes, I think they dislike him or hate him because he's not the status quo to what both parties, to some aspect, are trying to transform the United States into. More the Democrats are pushing it. There is still some resistance on the Republican side, but I think it's maybe like 1/3 of the Republicans, or maybe slightly higher, are not truly Republican. They are leaning more towards the blue than the red. I think I'm on the red with a little blue on my toes, maybe, but I'm more conservative. And I think, why would conservatives go after Trump? So if they're not doing it, that means that the left is doing it, right? There's been comments that says, I forget the name of the guy that wrote the book, but comment that you should do anything to get the power you want. I forget his name. Oh, it might come back to me. But if you think back to the Obama times and everything, and who was his chief of staff before he went to be mayor of New York and so forth, I forget his name right now as well. But if you think about what he said and everything, Democrats think they could, maybe not necessarily all Democrats, but the very liberal side of the Democratic Party thinks they could do anything for the right, if it's the right reason, regardless, violating of their oath of office, which takes us back to Colorado, which we talked about last week. All right, so there you have it. This is an awesome video. I think it's a good starting point to kind of get your brain thinking and wondering, man, could this be true? Is this real? All right, so go and look at that video. Check it out and start doing your own investigation. Here's another link. If you remember Obama and his last attempt at appointing a Supreme Court judge, Merrick Garland was it. I am so happy, so happy he was blocked. This guy is worthless as a attorney general, as probably as a judge. He is so wishy-washy, and he's got nothing in him as far as intestinal fortitude. He's asked by who is it? Representative Thomas Massey. So if you go to this link right here, it's a short video. It's on Twitter. It's put up by Ramaswamy, who's running for Republican office, but the video comes from C-SPAN, so it's a government recording. Nothing special. Again, I'm not posting it or showing it to you because I just don't want Google, who kind of nixed me last week on something I said. I just don't want to have a video that pops up that says, I don't have the rights to play that video. So if I put a link on it, you can go see it yourself. You can just listen to me and get the truth yourself from watching that. But he's asked directly. He's been in testimony several times about January 6th, and in this instance, he's asked by Thomas Massey from Kentucky, representative of Kentucky, what happened with the FBI people that were there? And he stalls and stalls and stalls. So anyway, check that out and you'll hear it. In fact, it gets to the very end and they talk about a fellow named, I think this video was recorded about a week and a half ago, so it's fairly new. This is Merrick Garland basically today, not today, but very recently, stating the same stuff he stated, but it doesn't tie into what Ray, if you watch the first video there from Higgins, Ray is on there and he makes comment, yeah, there were people there, somewhat. I'm not going to tell you how many, but no, they didn't incite anything. They didn't do anything for that. Look at his eyes, listen to his voice, and you can tell that he's probably not being 100% truthful there, and he's hiding, blocking stuff. You could just tell in tone of voice, the way he answers the questions, movement of his eyes and facial expressions, and so forth and so on. Retired police officer, you kind of learn some of those skills over time. So, a guy named Ray Epps, and the FBI said, he's not ours. He's not ours. I think he was said to be, I'm going to show you, well, Ray Epps was actually charged for a long time. Attorney General Garland wouldn't touch the guy until he got pressure from the left to finally do something. The guy is charged with a misdemeanor of kind of inciting some rioting or saying, let's go break into the Capitol building, or let's go. And he's put on probation for a year. Probation for a year. Can you believe that? It sounds like a lot, right? Until you look at, where is it? I don't know. I think it's this one. Until you look at this. A link to the list of arrested incarcerated citizens from January 6th. It's a pretty long list. And you look at, of course, I haven't seen the video. I haven't seen the evidence. But a lot of the things they're inciting here, or charged with, or plead guilty with, look like misdemeanor garbage stuff. The same thing that Epps got 6 months for, or probation, nothing, no time for, just a year on probation. Check in with your probation officer every month, and in 12 months, hey, nothing happened. Go live your life. But these people, if you look at the list, you're going to say, oh my gosh, these people were put away for a year, 2 years, 10 years for some of this stuff. It's ridiculous. Why did they plead guilty? They have a public defender. They have no money. They're common Joe citizens like you and I. They have no money. They can't afford an attorney on their own. Nobody cares about them. Have you heard anything in Congress about it? That list, go to the list. It is long, very long. Some of these people have been in jail for 2, 3, 4 years. There's still people in jail that haven't gone to trial yet for basically minor crimes. Why would somebody do that to these people if this wasn't a setup? Right? If this was not a setup, or if this whole thing wasn't fake. They're trying to make examples of these people so you and I and others will not fight them. This is how the left wins. This is how the people against the United States Constitution, those that want to total control, authoritarian power, this is what they do to control you and control all of us. Put people in jail for nothing. Pull you away from your family, your kids. Make you go bankrupt, lose your house, lose your car, lose your job, lose everything. Who wants that? Well, this is the whole reason for January 6th. This is the whole reason for the Insurrection Committee at the House. This is the whole reason for why the FBI, maybe the Department of Justice participated as well. I would not be surprised. Or any of these other organizations. If the FBI is involved, why isn't the NSA involved? Why isn't the Homeland Security involved? Maybe they were to some extent. We don't know. But as you look deeper and deeper, you start to see that this January 6th event was pre-thought, it was planned, and it was acted upon by, I hate to say the left, but like I said, why would the right do it to their own people? They wouldn't, right? So it was done by the left, a political organization. Now, if you're on the left, if you're a part of the LGBTQ community, if you're African American, black, if you're Asian, if you're Hispanic, if you're whatever you are, if you're queer, I don't know, whatever you are, you need to know what happened in France in their revolutionary time back in the early 1800s. And you can see it a little bit today. Some of those people that started that revolutionary period eventually got eaten by it. I mean, they got beheaded and killed and so forth and so on. The people that started it. Once those that seek power get into total power, all the freebies, the free giving, all the loyalty you think they provided for you is taken away. It is. There's going to be an elite class of 3 to 5% of the population, and everybody else is just going to be the peon class. And the word peon is a real word, and you know what that means, right? Well, I mean peon, where they're actually peeing on us. To some aspect, that's true. We're going to be the lower class, the peon class, P-E-O-N, peon class. That's they just use us. So January 6th, let me see what else I got. Oh, you know what? I didn't talk about Ashley Babbitt. Let me see if I got her up here somewhere. Oh, I talked about January 6th committee. 2 of them were Republicans, but they weren't red Republicans. They were actually blue Republicans. Liz Cheney and a guy named Adam Kinzinger from Illinois, who comes from a Republican community. So why not be a Democrat, fake you're a Republican, and get elected? There you go, right? I see it your way, people. I'll be whatever you want me to be just to get elected. Oh, let's talk about, I think, Ashley Babbitt. So we talked about that real quick. Merrick Garland, where is Ashley? That's the incarcerated citizens. That's the January House. I don't think I did Ashley. Where is she? I did one for her, so I thought maybe I missed it. Let's talk about Ashley Babbitt. I have a link for her. Let me see if I can find it. It's on Twitter as well. She was the only person killed in the whole revolution, insurrection. She was a military. I don't think she retired, but she was in the military. Can't remember which branch, either the Army, I think, or the Marine Corps. She comes from my hometown, San Diego. You're starting to see instances where there's some lawsuits starting to happen for her at this point. Hard to believe 3 years later, and they're only starting to have real lawsuits for her because she was killed. Here I am, a police officer, San Diego County Marshal, San Diego County Sheriff, Deputy, and Public and Traffic Safety Commissioner for the City of Temecula. So 17 years in law enforcement, another almost 5 years as a commissioner. So 22 years in the law enforcement area. Ashley's shooting was a bad shoot. They exonerated the police officer. He was a black lieutenant on, I think, the Capitol Police Department. I think they had stated he had some issues as far as psychological issues in the past. Why he was still on the department, that's a good question. I don't think it matters what color his skin is, to be honest with you. If the officer was white, black, green, yellow, blue, it doesn't really matter. As you go back and you watch this video, there's no way I can really put it up here for you. I thought I had it up there. Director Ray, C-SPAN Merrick Garland, list of people, January 6th committee. I don't have it. So if you go to LAURIELUS.MOLLY/status/17437731703055046 question mark S equals 20, you'll be able to see a video. And that video will have kind of 2 minutes, 3 minutes before the actual shooting of her, what's going on at the location. It looks like they're right outside of a big area, office area, maybe chambers of senators or congressmen, whatever it might be. It appears to be a double wood door with some glass that is very strong, unbreakable type glass, or shatterproof type glass, so it takes a real effort to get through it. I don't think it's bulletproof glass from what I looked at. Inside the doors, you can see some stacked chairs to kind of barricade the area from the doors being, I guess, easily broken or pushed in. Usually when you have double doors, the center point is a real weak spot and can easily be kicked in. Being that this is in the house and it's going into maybe a secure location, the doors might be reinforced wood-wise, but the windows are still the weakest spot breaking in. As you're watching, the video starts, you can see the people outside, protesters outside, making some noise and chanting and at the police, and there's like 3 or 4 police officers standing in front of the door, kind of blocking the entryway. You can see the glass to some of the windows it's not broken out, but it has been broken. What else? You can see that going on for a few minutes. Eventually there's a camera shot, it's probably a cell phone that took the video. You can see into the room, and you can see actually on the left side a hand, looks like a black man's hand, holding a gun, a semi-automatic gun, and pointing it slightly at the door where the officers and where the protesters are. Why, for whatever reason, I don't know if the police officer's standing right in front of the door, got a radio call, let him in or move away or whatever it was. Maybe this was a setup too. I don't know for sure. But if you watch the video, you can kind of determine for yourself. After a minute or so, they actually move away from the door and down some stairs, it appears. The protesters get a little more antsy and they start pounding on the windows. I think they eventually break out the one on the right. You can see, or there's a point out where you can see actually Ashley Babbitt. They stopped the video, and this is Ashley. You can see where she is trying to crawl through the window. It almost looks like, it's hard to see, but almost looks like she's straddling, being inside and outside of the room. I don't know which way she's facing, if it's towards the gun or away from the gun. And then you hear a shot, boom. Most of the protesters at that point take off running on, looks like a platformer down the stairs. One protester goes down to help her. She's been shot, I think is what he says, or somebody says. And then you see a couple police, I think they're Capitol Police. Looks like they have automatic weapons, rifles type guns in their hands. He comes up, checks her real quick. The first guy comes up and checks her real quick, then looks through the open window. He probably sees, because he acknowledges somebody on the other side, maybe saying it's okay or it's code 4, whatever it might be. And then you see the officer kind of shake his head and then turn around. And then he and the other officer that kind of came up with the other automatic weapon, I think they walk back down the stairs, and then the video kind of stops right there. So that's not a good shoot. Sorry to tell you. Through my years of training, being in law enforcement, going to advanced officer trainings and so forth, through the academy trainings, even today, as a CCW holder myself, that's not a good shoot. I, as a citizen, would be sued, most likely prosecuted, put in jail for murder if I would have shot her doing that, or if I saw somebody doing that to a window in my house. That's not a good shoot. Nowhere could I hear, and maybe it's because one of the windows was blocked, you could not hear anybody telling her, stop, do not cross the line, do not enter this room, do not climb through the window. You don't hear anything like that. I think the audio is pretty good. Maybe something was said, but maybe if the volume, you could turn the volume up, maybe you could hear something in the background. But based on the audio that was there, you could not hear anything. So she was not armed. She's straddling a broken glass window and a door frame. I'm not sure which way she was facing, away or toward. She definitely didn't have anything in her hands trying to climb through the window. It's a bad shoot, and that officer should have been prosecuted. Sorry. That's where we are today in law enforcement. 35, 40 years ago, that probably would have been a good shoot. But based upon where we've been in the last 10, 15 years, that was a bad shoot. And yet, he walks away free. There's some comment or something that he's had mental issues in the past. If that's true, even a lesser reason why he shouldn't have been there and shouldn't have had a weapon. He should have been retired from the department. So with that said, Ashley Babbitt is the only one to have died in that whole incident. There was another officer, I think, had a heart attack and died. I think it was proven that nothing of the riot and of it's the riot. I classify it as a riot. Okay, maybe it's a riot because there was damage done to the building. A couple $1 million, I think, 2, 3, 4, 20 million, somewhere in that. There was some damage done to the building. But if you go back to the Antifa back in Minnesota and other areas, down in Wisconsin, and the reporter standing there, it's pretty much peaceful protest. And in the background, the buildings are all on fire. There's a police car on fire, and people are running around screaming and yelling at each other. It's peaceful. It's a riot. All right. So a riot, possibly. Insurrection. No, it was not an insurrection. In my opinion, you're welcome to investigate. I gave you some tools here. If you do an investigation and you find that in your mind it was a riot, I would love to hear back from you and hear why you think it was. And possibly we could do a little debate. Or maybe I'll see your stuff and say, man, I missed that, and you're 100% right. That was an insurrection, and we should do something about it. But at this point, with what I have and what I know, what I've seen, possibly a riot, but not based upon the Antifa and BLM issues that were going on earlier. It was just a protest based on that. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this. Yesterday we had an election in Iowa. Trump won, I think, by close to 51% of the vote. On to the next place, right? Where do they go from there? I forget. But I think if any of the other candidates have a chance, they got to do it in this next one. South Carolina, I think, is the third one. I think, didn't Biden lose the first two, and then he won in South Carolina, and then eventually won the presidency, right? So maybe that's a bunch of bunk. maybe people can spend millions upon millions of dollars and still get elected, possibly. But anyway, I think it's all corrupt, which comes to another one. We have an election coming up. If you watch, I think I didn't put up Trump's. I think I told you to watch Trump's speech on January 6th. It runs about an hour and 10 minutes or something like that, maybe 50 minutes, somewhere in that ballpark. But he makes a lot of assertions as to voting. I don't know. Maybe he's just a liar. Maybe he brings up all these facts from nowhere. But if you go and do a little bit of investigation, truck going from New York to Philadelphia loaded with ballots from a witness, eyewitness. The eyewitness was the guy that drove the truck. If you see something in Georgia where they say, we're closing down for the day. No more count today. We're going to start back up tomorrow. And by the beginning of tomorrow, or you see them starting pulling stuff from underneath tables and starting to count. Might be an issue with that. And that's on videotape. So that's just two instances. Trump, in his speech, talks about all these, 136% vote in Wisconsin. What? Who voted twice? All the dead people, I guess, right? Voter rolls not cleared off or cleaned up, and those people are voting. People voting. I live here in Nevada. I still get stuff from Riverside County in California to vote. I haven't voted for anything in California since I moved to Nevada, but I would like to know if somebody has voted in my place in California. Interesting, right? Because I sure haven't. I take my ballots that I get here and I just throw them in the trash can because I only vote here in Nevada. So anyway, I should be cleared off. It's been 6 years and I'm still getting stuff from California to vote. With that said, maybe we'll talk about voting next week. We have a big election coming up here pretty quick. I think it's another 2 weeks before the next state does their votes. And we'll see how it's New Hampshire, I think, isn't it? It might be New Hampshire. So anyway, lots of stuff to talk about. And this is why January 6th was not an insurrection. Use common sense. Do some investigation and looking for yourself. Don't believe everything and anything what people tell you it is, no matter how many times you hear it. With that said, you may not like what I said today. You may love what I said today. But it's the truth, and sometimes the truth hurts. So with that said, we'll see you next time, and not sure what I'll talk about next week. I'll come up with something. Something will happen between now and then. You have a great week and stay out of trouble.